All right, howdy everybody. Welcome to this video here at Top Comics Pressing. In this video, what I'm going to do is talk about, perhaps actually crack here, this copy of Uncanny X-Men 266. For X-Men enthusiasts, you'll know that X-Men number 266, the Uncanny X-Men, is the first full appearance of Gambit. It's one of those first appearances that's always contentious because Gambit also appeared in an annual that month, although he wasn't named as a character. He's kind of a floating head in the background of a few panels. And so because of that, this says the first full appearance on new CGC slabs, whereas it says the first appearance on this one. So in this particular case, this is a really nice high-grade copy. It's coming in at a CGC 9.2, and you'll notice that this is the older version of the labels. And so this, I believe, predates 2006. And I was able to snag this from an LCS I frequent, and I was able to pick it up and be very excited for it. Now, I had actually already owned a copy, so this is my other personal copy, and by coincidence today, I have two other copies from a client that I was actually pressing. So these actually were fresh out of the press today. Now, what I want to do is discuss if I should or should not crack this comic and a couple of the other things that you can see on the outside. So the very first thing I want to draw your attention to is that you can see of these four books, only the top one here is the Newsstand that has the UPC and the barcode. The other three are all direct editions containing this kind of floating Spider-Man head. That's important. There are certain collectors that pay a big premium for high-grade copies of Newsstand issues, and particularly those post-1985. The reason I mention that is if you look up on Go Collect or another comic blog or even on Facebook, you can find charts. CBCS has one that show the direct editions and newsstand editions kind of changing pathways over time. And when the direct market was introduced, there were almost exclusively newsstands and there were very, very few direct comics. But as times changed and comic book stores became the primary retailer for comic books, the newsstand version became incredibly rare. And that's particularly true for books of this era or maybe slightly later. So in this particular case, this is a 1990 book. So you can see there the date on the CGC slab is 1990. And also, by the way, it says it right there in super fine print right at the top. And so in 1990, I looked it up, and according to a couple of sources, the estimated newsstand distribution was about 15%. That is 15%. And so that makes this book, quite a bit rarer than the direct copy, and some collectors will pay a premium for that. So I saw this book for sale at a fair market value for a standard direct 9.2 edition, and I thought, you know what, I bet you both because it's a newsstand and because it's the older CGC slab label, I might be able to give this thing a Bumpski with a little bit of Top Comics pressing love and care. So the other thing that I wanted to draw your attention to on this book is that if you look across the top here, the uncanny is fully visible and it's not too badly miswrapped. The reason I say that is this book is notoriously miswrapped and miscut. And so this is the copy that was in my personal collection. Well, I guess still is in my personal collection. You can see here the word "the uncanny" is sliced off on top. And that's not because somebody trimmed it or screwed with it. It was just really poor production quality in that particular year and this particular run especially. And if you look down here, you can see at the top spine corner, you do not see any of that black bar or white. But as you scroll down the comic book here, by the time you get to the bottom corner, not only do you see the entire black bar, but you see white exposed from the back cover. And so that means this cover was originally manufactured crooked, and there's nothing you can do about it other than to deal with it. You can see there's a very light staple tear around the staple too. And so I've seen people try to correct this by adjusting it, but if the staples are lined up, you can either have the staples lined up or the inner wraps lined up to make a nice square and to fix that line, but you can't have both the staples and the wrap if the staples aren't on the same line. And so in this particular case, if you tried to fix this miswrap, you'd end up making your pages kind of splayed out and skewed over on the top open edge. And so I would not advise trying to fix that in this copy, and there's no way you can obviously recut it either on top. So the Newsstand copy in question here, you can see is really nice. There actually is a little bit of a color border here under the Newsstand, and you can see it has the Uncanny on top. And so that was really exciting for me to be able to see. And you can see on the other two direct copies I have here, this one is pretty nice with that full Uncanny, nice and square and not too bad of a miswrap, whereas this other one has it. You can see it's more poorly cut because you can see a little bit of green up there, but as you get to the Y, that green above the Uncanny kind of goes away. So that's really standard for this issue. Put those over there. The other thing that I noticed right off the bat is this one looked to me to be slightly yellowed. Now it does say white pages, but the cover here definitely compared to this copy did not look as bright to me in the white areas here. So I can see if I can bring it up there, especially if you look at the X-Men, and particularly if you look down here at the UPC versus that direct edition, you can see that the white here is quite a bit brighter than in there. And so that meant that a very light treatment of a whitening would probably make this book pop and will help support the higher grade. Now, just thinking about, what is the cost benefit risk kind of ratio or grid when thinking about cracking this book. The good news is it is a modern book, so it is post 1975, and so that means that it'll be probably at or around their $400 value at CGC. Some people get upset because they rank books in terms of the tier and the value. I think the truth is, as long as you're not too ridiculous about it, you can squeeze by with books that clear that tier. And my understanding is, based on examples from people online, if you're using a raw price of 9.4-ish, as a near mint raw, that's kind of the threshold you can use. So this book at the moment is well under that $400 limit as a raw sharp copy, and so because of that, this will be able to go in with any other modern book, and that's important to recognize because that sets the cost for making this dice roll. Okay, and so, I'll probably have to add on a little bit in shipping, but roughly under $30 to see if I can boost it. Now, the other part then is to see how much we think we can boost. And so if I look at this book, by the way, I'll show you the serial number or read it off because it's super fine on this. It's 01186-43012. So it's very small fine print on this book. At that 9.2 grade, we're going to start looking for some small defects and probably around the spines and the corners and see if we can find anything that we think is pressable. And so as I scroll down the spine here, it actually looks really clean below this bottom staple. And as I get up into this range here, I can see that there's one very small spine tick right there and one very small spine tick right there. I believe both of those break color, but it's very subtle if they do. And we can see that there's another little itty bitty one right there. There's a little bit of schmutz up there, and maybe another little tick right there. So this book probably will not get a 9.8 because of those various fine spine ticks. But if I look in the glare everywhere else, I'm not seeing a whole lot here that's a problem. There might be a very small nick out of the bottom edge right below that corner there that I would consider that a binding tear, not anything too crazy. And when I flip it over here to look at the back, so I'll let you view the whole back. By the way, here you can notice it's miswrapped the reverse way ever so slightly because you do indeed see some of the color from the front cover as it rolls over there. So, but all in all, a very good wrap for this issue. And if I zoom up and look here, I don't see a ton that is messed up. And one thing that I do find positive as well is I can see here that this does not look like it was dry cleaned. So there's a little bit of just transfer of dirt and whatever from being in a stack of comic books there along the edge. And so this overall to me looks like a really good candidate to crack, because when I scan the whole book here, I would say that the biggest defects are these very fine color breaking ticks that you have to be really close and look at in the glare to see. And so based on my experience with CGC, that means that this book should be able to press up to a 9.6 is the most likely grade. So on this, with the rework, what I'm going to look for is doing a dry clean and then a quick re-whitening and then repress, and I'm going to hope to land a 9.6 grade. All right, so let's see if we can crack this beast out. These older CGC slabs actually have a sticker on top here. That's where the grade was. This is one of the thinner ones. This is a little bit older of a version. And you'll notice that they have this little keyhole over there. And so what I'm gonna do in that corner, and I always start when I'm cracking a slab from up top, because that's when I feel I have the less control over what I'm doing. And if I accidentally slip, I want the screwdriver I'm gonna use to damage the label, not the book inside. And so what I'm gonna do here is take my screwdriver and just see if I can crack that plastic. Ooh, it's not coming as much as I would have liked. Let's see if I can rip this label off. Maybe put it right in the middle. There we go. That's the cracking noise you want to hear. So sometimes I'll start in the middle and then just try to slide my screwdriver. And I'm using just a regular flathead screwdriver, by the way. There's literally nothing special about this. If you have a toolbox at home, you probably have one of these already. So we want to just try to crack. There are posts in the corner here, and we're just going to try to crack those posts so that the book pops out. And here I did a bad thing. It's not what you want to do. You want the plastic to crack around the corner of the post. You can see it right there. There's a little plastic post. Let's go the other way and see if we can get lucky and crack it in that direction. Yeah, there we go. So that one cracked clean. There we go. Busted the post in that direction. Yep. Ta-da! All right, so that's our hard plastic shell. All of the CGC cases come with this outer shell, and then they come with what's called the inner well. And so I'm just gonna carefully flip this over here, and hopefully the comic will flop out. So in the old days, they would seal this label on the inner well, and I actually liked that because it's physically impossible then if you encapsulate this inner label to switch it. I mean, I've heard of people doing that. I've never seen it done or caught anybody with it, but I would imagine it would be possible. But if they just simply sealed the top edge with this in there, then it would be physically impossible to do it without pulling the whole thing out and cutting it open. All right, anyway, so this is the inner well. You can see it has the corners on all sides, and there's a little bit of a gap around that comic. And I'm gonna cut through this part up here. And what I wanna do is gently just tap that down to make sure that that book is sitting as far down as possible. Oh, by the way, for the cutting surface, this is an MDF board that I got from my brother. You can see I use it a lot. There's a lot of scratches over here for cutting through a bunch of slabs, and so that's generally what I do. I use this exact same board for my ironing, but I flip it over. So I have one side that I cut through and put a bunch of chips and nicks into, and then I have a different side that I use for all my ironing, just to make sure I'm not damaging my desk by putting a bunch of heat on there from the ironing. All right, so there is a little gap up here, and this is the nerve-wracking part. So I have a big box razor here with a pretty big open blade, and what I'm gonna do is simply find a point as far up as I can and just gently pull. And I'm angling that blade, so if I slip, I'm gonna slice off the comic in this direction, not into the comic. And so it is angled, and as you can see, it's kind of hard to go. But I'm applying some downward pressure, and I'm gonna cut all the way through it because I want to be able to cut through this whole thing in one deal, just like that, so that I can peel it off. And then what I do, because I'm right-handed and I'm gonna pull, is I'm gonna go to the other side and then gently pull towards me in this direction. And again, I'm trying to angle that blade, so if I do slip in any way, I'm gonna go through, or away from the comic, not into the comic, because that would be tragic. And I've seen some of these that are a lot tighter than that, so thankfully this one had a pretty good distance there between the comic and the thing. So this is it, that's our inner well. I'm gonna put that away so I don't accidentally hit myself. So now we've got this. Now to get your comic out of here, we did leave a little bit of a nick here in the plastic, and so that is potentially sharp and we don't wanna cause any rips or tears in the book. So I'm gonna try to open this up very carefully and get my thumb in there and then try to get my index finger. You definitely don't wanna tear it. And then I'm gonna try to use my other hand here as I pull this out to make sure I'm pulling up and avoiding causing any tears on there. All right, so now it's our time to grade this and see if I was right to do a crack and press here. And the reason I say that is sometimes comics have defects that are really hard to see through really two layers of plastic, right? Because you got the inner well and then you got the outer well. And since it's not your book, you don't know what you're looking for. And some defects can hide because, you know, usually I use what CGC calls the raking glare, that is watching a glare roll across that comic. And so we can see if we missed anything here. And indeed we did, unfortunately. So if I look right across the bottom edge here, you can see that there's a little bit of nicking in that comic book along that border. That's a manufacturing defect. So we're gonna have to see if we can press that out. I'm gonna see it right here, you can kind of see it. Just looks like nicking. It's from using the dull blade-ish in the cutting process to pull that across. So that's unfortunate. I did correctly identify the spine ticks over there, and as I roll through this comic, I can see that there's a little bit of a finger bend right here, so that should press out. And then let's look at the back and make sure we have everything that we want here. And right here, there's a pretty big bend, so we'll see if what we can do there. But right under that newspaper, there's a bend. And it looks like there's something, oh yeah, this is micro chamber paper from CGC, so we'll want to pull that out. If you crack a slab, go looking for those. Okay, so, and then, yep, that looks like it. So hopefully this manufacturing defect will get overlooked at the high end, but that's disappointing to see. There is the finger bend right there. And then there's the bend on the back that we'll have to figure out. So I'm still optimistic for my 9.6. We'll see how I do, and I'll let you know when it comes back from CGC. So thanks for watching. Feel free to give me a thumbs up, a like, a subscribe, tell your friends, etc. Appreciate your attention. All right, everybody, this is just a check-in midway in the process. So this Uncanny X-Men 266 is the Newsstand edition that we cracked out of a CGC slab. At the time in the intro video, I commented that it looked quite yellowed up top and down here and along the spine area. And so I compared it to the direct edition below in terms of whiteness. And so I just want to kind of zoom up into that area so you can see now the barcode and that direct Spider-Man logo are very similar, as is the area up here in terms of whiteness. And so this book now has been through two different bleed overlay treatments on the front and then the back cover, so 4 total treatments. The details of those treatments you can read about in the comic book stain removal and whitening resource right here. And so these would be the blue light and hydrogen peroxide overlay that we call Bled O. And then they've really helped to make this book pop, and hopefully that'll increase the vibrancy of the colors and help present much better to the CGC graders. So we'll take a look at it after the press. Right here you can see that it does wrinkle now a little bit in the glare. So if you look at that, you can see some cover wrinkling and distortion. That's normal after this process, and it should flatten out in the final press. So very excited to have this book ready to get sent back out after it goes through a press here. So thank you for tuning in. All right, everybody, this is the view of this Uncanny 266 Newsstand right before it goes off to CGC. So remember, this is the one we cracked out as a prior CGC 9.2. I think we were able to press out a number of those defects, so I'll have some pictures of that before and afters. Hopefully when the slab comes back, we were able to give it a little bit of a whitening. The Newsstand and the X-Men logo up here look a lot better. The one thing that I was a little hesitant about was when I was pressing it, I noticed that there might be a very, very, very slight staple tear. And so I hope that doesn't get picked up and flagged as a staple tear. To me, it looks manufacturing, but you never know. So again, very nice copy I was able to get pre-slabbed, and we'll see what it comes back at. All right, here we go. Jury is back in. Final verdict is issued from CGC. This is the copy of Uncanny X-Men 266 that was previously a 9.2 grade in the old kind of CGC label. And this copy I thought was just beautiful because it had a really nice center. The full Uncanny was there. It was a really nice copy of this book, and so I was excited to see that. Final verdict here after a crack, press, and clean. 9.6 white pages here from CGC. So this one is a pretty epic upgrade on a very classic and very popular X-Men book. So thank you for your attention. Please click the subscribe button. It's somewhere right down here. Just click the button. Doesn't cost you anything, and it helps me out quite a bit. So I appreciate it. Also, please give a good old thumbs up on the video.